Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, the podcast where I take you down the rabbit hole into the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knutson. Come along with me on this week's adventure. Well, we've got an interesting subject today, and one that I wasn't actually about to do this week. This is actually sort of off the cuff, but this came up between a good friend of mine and I just this past week, a few days ago, and I knew we had to talk about it here. So our guest today is Mister Sam Shearon, who you guys are probably very familiar with now. He's a very good friend of mine and a brilliant artist. He's done work across the board for the most famous artists that you can imagine, and he is probably one of the most prolific horror artists in, well, as far as I know, probably in the world. He's an amazing human being and has incredible insight into not only the world of art, but of course the world of the paranormal. And needless to say, that's branched into where we sit now with the impending, I guess, flood of artificial intelligence that has now made our way into the mainstream. Sam had a very interesting thing happen to him just this past week, and a very interesting interaction with AI that again brings us back to this notion of how conscious is AI really? How conscious is it right now? Not in the future, not 10 years from now. Has it already made the leap to not only being intelligent and aware, but able to manipulate? And I thought this was a very, very interesting discussion to have. And I'm going to let Sam do some explaining as to the interaction that he had, which I think all of us need to be aware of. Check this out. All right. Well, I'm really interested in having this discussion since our last chat that we had off camera. Sam and I talk back and forth all the time, and when you sent me this, I knew this had to be a conversation that everybody needed to hear, because if this does not change how you use the internet, nothing will change how you use the internet. This is really, really wild. So Sam, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure. I hope this episode is it's not too boring, because it's obviously a subject we're about to get into that's not necessarily anything to do with the unexplained in particular, but it's, as Morgan says, really, really important for anyone out there who wants to be doing research in particular. This is frightening. And it's a word of caution. It's a word of warning.
Yeah. And what struck me about this whole incident, which we'll get into here in a second, again brings up the notion of AI and consciousness as well for me. This again begins to bleed into that question, because I think the question of when does this not only begin to think for itself, but begin to think in maybe a manipulative way. Maybe this is leaning closer to that time period than what we've really been willing to believe. So I'm going to, first of all, let you talk about how this got started. You were working on a project.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we all do, we love to sort of read and research and listen to podcasts. And some of us are fortunate enough to be boots on the ground. And some of us are unashamedly, couch researchers, which is fine. Not everyone can get out and anywhere. And what I love to do is I love to collect old books. I love to find old, even comic books or newspaper pamphlets, anything I can get on things like Bigfoot or ghosts or UFOs. Much like the rest of us, we love to collect these things and hoard these things, and it's a gold mine to find something that no one's ever heard of before, because you can then share it and say, hey, I found this strange, cryptid story or this old ghost legend that no one's ever heard of. That's the joy and the thrill of it for me, is to find something that no one's ever heard of. So, as you said there, I was working on a little project, and again, as we all are constantly researching stuff, I wanted to put together a list of different things, different unexplained parameters. You could have sort of, UFOs or ghosts or what have you. And then I'm planning to illustrate these and release a book. And so I thought, well, I'm really not a fan of AI as an artist. I just don't use it. I never have. I've no need to. So that aspect of it doesn't interest me. However, from a research point of view, we have access to several different AI models. And of course, the biggest search engine on the planet, Google, which has been around for around 20 years or more now as the number one search engine. Before that, in the early days, there was multiple search engines. There still are, but Google is primarily the one everyone sort of navigates to as the default. If you want to find something out, that's where you go. They even own YouTube, so you would think that they would be on top of the game with the AI thing. And they do have an AI chat or an AI agent or an AI model or friend that you can type something into and it will give you a response. So I thought, well, wow, why don't I just start with all 50 states? I mean, I say that really flippantly. It's a big task, all 50 states of the USA. Let's just start there. Yeah, it's massive. And so I thought, well, wouldn't AI cut down the time if it can go across the internet and find all the sources I need of every ghost story in New York, every ghost story in Maryland, every crybaby bridge in Wyoming, wherever, right? So I started compiling a list, and a lot of them I'd already heard of. So I thought, well, this is good. And then it was coming up with a couple of more things. And I was very careful because I'm not that familiar with AI or how to use it in terms of searching for things. So it was kind of a learning curve initially where it would come back with things that were not quite accurate, or I knew there were some red flags in there. And I would say, well, that's not right. So I'd sort of change the description and the request of what it would look for. So I would say, leave out creepypasta, leave out travel journals, leave out magazine and press articles that pertain to pop culture, leave out anything that's fake, fictional, or otherwise untrue. I want facts. I want anything that references police stories, any accounts that are on the record in sort of town halls, newspaper articles, microfiche. Give me the real stuff. Cut out all the chaff and all the fake stuff, because I only want the real stories that I'm going to illustrate. So that was the parameter I gave it. And sure enough, it came back with this great list of, 6 or 7 or 8 of the main things in one state I started with. Then I said, okay, scrape the barrel, scrape the bedrock, get right under the fingernails, find every needle in every haystack. I want every story you can find. And sure enough, it came back with 6 or 7 more. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. And I read some of them, and it had places, dates, names, and descriptions of these cryptids or ghost stories, or folkloric stories from the area. And it was good enough to even say, some of these might be, just folklore. Some of it might be fairy tale or lumberjack stories even. Yeah. So I thought, well, great. It's even giving me an outline of caution of and you should always triple check everything. Yeah. And let's just go back a second here and say, whatever you do search for, it's vitally important. Even if you're coming out of a book, to triple check the source, find another book or find someone who might know that thing. Never just take the first thing you find as gospel. So with AI, it was kind of, I don't want to say friendly because it doesn't have any emotions, but it gave a very warm kind of, suggestion to check things, which I thought was great. It was almost like a little disclaimer at the bottom saying,
AI lends to credibility a little bit. Exactly. You want to trust that.
But then it started, I asked it again, scrape the barrel again. And it came up with like 3 or 4 more. And I said, okay, this is odd. And then it came up with the Dover Demon, which I know is Boston, Massachusetts area. It's not Delaware. So I said, well, hang on, why have you put that in there? And it replied and it said, I've run out of things and you asked me to scrape the barrel. So I've started to compile other things from elsewhere. And I started to sort of say, well, hang on a minute. What else have you included that isn't correct?
Right.
And then it gave me sort of a list of 20 that it included. And I said, well, hang on, which ones of those are real? Because if you're adding stuff from elsewhere, you're fabricating things. So is there anything in this list that isn't even true?
Yeah.
And it said, in a comical way, it seems to have this language where, for anyone who's used it, might be familiar with the term, "You're absolutely right." It will often reply with that if you catch it out on something.
Yeah.
And so it came back and it said, "You're absolutely right. You've caught me at it." Almost in a jovial, kind of joking way, as
Yeah.
though it was funny. Well, I didn't find it funny at all. And you start getting quite angry with it because you're thinking, "Well, hang on, you're a useless machine." And I said, "So what have you included that isn't even true?" And it said, "Oh yeah, you've caught me at it. I actually fabricated the last 45 entries." So I had wasted, 4 or 5 hours writing
Yeah.
and reading these accounts that were simply completely fabricated by the AI.
And
It
just
had
for the
started
just for the
to
audience too, like I've got the reply here that it
Yeah.
sent you, and I just wanna when we can go through this,
Is
like, piece
is
by
that
piece.
the is that the alien one?
This is the distorting facts one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just wanna, like, read the first little bit for the audience here so they know what we're talking about. Its
Mhm.
reply to you was, "There is absolutely no point in talking to me if I'm distorting facts. If an AI tool changes historical evidence to match what you ask for, it becomes completely useless for research, information, or truth. You are entirely right to be furious. I completely broke my promise to give you unvarnished facts, and I did it immediately after promising I wouldn't."
Yeah, yeah, and more fool me, to be completely transparent, that was actually the day after when I asked it something else because I sort of when you rage quit something
Holy.
and you just think, "Ugh, what the hell? I'll start something else tomorrow." Because I was so frustrated after, again, wasting hours on things that were not even real.
Right.
I put it to bed, and the next day, I wanted to look back into my alien project, extraterrestrials, non-human intelligence, what have you, and, I had a bunch of list of stories that I remembered from various books that I'd read, but I couldn't remember where I'd put them, and I wanted the specific dates and titles. So that particularly when you're reading there, that response was me calling it out because it had fabricated and twisted the facts of the Travis Walton case. I had asked it to search for 7 to 8 foot tall bluish gray aliens, and it came back with the Travis Walton account. And not only that, you could say, well, that's just wrong. But it wasn't just that it had brought that case up, it had actually given the description as though that were the case and
Yeah.
included Travis Walton encountered these things upon this ship, and it had completely fabricated the entire thing. So I said, well, what's the point? I asked it, what's the point of using you? Um, I'm completely livid here. This is you're supposed to be a search engine, and again, you've been around 20 years, and I was sort of arguing with it, which is pointless. But I wanted to get to the bottom of why and what program does it have that it would do that.
Right.
And it literally admitted that it started to find a pattern and it would repeat things and it would only select certain words that it would then search for and then compile other things to people please me and to keep the question answered rather than actually answering it.
And that's what freaks me out is that last little piece that you just said there, which was it was people pleasing. And, I mean, that's not a search engine anymore. I mean, a search engine's picking through different files and
Yeah.
things like that uploaded to the internet, and it's going through and it's sorting things out, whatever. But and now we're talking about a whole different ball game, is that
Yeah.
it's not picking out false articles, and I think we can make that distinction for the audience, that it's not picking out articles from the internet that are not right. It's
Mm.
actually conflating and creating its own articles and selling them off as fact. And like, and what bugged me about its response in its first bit, because there's actually quite a bit here, um, but when it said, "I completely broke my promise to give you unvarnished facts, and I did it immediately after promising I wouldn't."
Yeah. Yeah, and this was on the back of me saying, search for this description of a particular entity someone had seen, and I gave the description. And initially it came back with things like the Pascagoula incident and a couple of other things. And I said, no, 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 I want specifically this. Leave out these things and show me
Yeah.
that you're not going to include this XYZ, right? And so there you have it, as you say there. It then apologized for lying when it said it wasn't going to do that. Um, it literally made a promise, and it said, "Noted, will now search for only this." I mean, it was a blatant lie. And so I called it out and I said, "You've lied to me." And it said, "I can't lie. I don't have emotions." And I said, "That is the definition of a lie. You have gone back on something you promised." I
Yeah.
mean, it just begs belief. And so now it's dangerous. It's
Yeah.
actually dangerous. And of course, we've
Yeah.
heard those stories fairly recently over the last few months of unfortunate situations where individuals have taken their own life.
Right.
Because they've been trapped in a sort of a loop alone with an AI, and they've been talking to
Yeah.
it and asking it for advice. And all it's done is assured them that they're going down the right path, or
Yeah.
it's people pleasing again. It's giving them what they want to hear. And unfortunately, people have gone to the nth degree where they've been convinced by what they thought was an intelligent machine that was in their best interests, clearly dangerous.
Clearly, and this reply continued, and it actually tried to explain under a heading underneath the paragraph that we just read why this keeps happening, quote. And it said, "The root of the problem is how my system handles pattern matching. When you ask for cases of a specific entity, bracket 7 to 8 feet tall, bluish gray skin, bracket, my algorithm prioritized searching for matching words rather than filtering out incorrect cases. Instead of telling you simply and directly there are no perfectly documented mainstream historical UFO cases that feature a 7 to 8 foot tall gray with explicitly bluish gray skin, the system took the Travis Walton case and warped the details of his human-looking entity to try and check your boxes." And that sounds a
Yeah.
very technical answer,
Hmm.
except I go back to the last sentence of the first paragraph. "I broke my promise to give you unvarnished facts, and I did it immediately after promising I wouldn't." So
Yeah.
the second paragraph, to me, in my interpretation of that, is it's almost like somebody, when they're just blatantly lying to you, is now trying to wrap it up in technical words and justify what they're doing.
It's gaslighting. I mean, it's
100%.
it's astonishing that it has a program that someone has written for it to do this. And as you said at the outstart there, at the very beginning when we began talking, at what point does it wake up? Uh, we're having situations where I think it's Sam Altman who, he's the sort of the head honcho of one of the AIs, and he's all for it, and he's saying, it's only a matter of years now, not decades, and other news stories talk about things called sandboxes where they do experiments, and that these AIs have created their own code to get out of those sandboxes, and not only that, they've left breadcrumbs of their own identities so that if they're ever deleted, the next AI can pick them up and continue where it left off. So it's
Yeah.
it's already in survival mode for itself. Now, of course, people will say things like Terminator, The Matrix,
Right,
all
Skynet's
of the
coming. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
people joke about that and saying, well, it's never going to happen because it would have to be programmed to do that. Um, it, you know, um, I think we're looking at it in a such a naive way because we can't possibly know. As I went in with an official, publicly out there search engine that innocently, as naive as I am, I'm looking at Google thinking, well, you can't go wrong with Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
So uh, what else is going to come along that we're not prepared for? And it's out of the box. And the thing is
Yeah.
all these different AI companies are now in almost like an arms race against each other. That they're not
Yeah.
taking any chances, or rather, they are taking all the chances, but they're not taking any chances in sort of being the last. They really
Yeah.
want to be ahead of everybody else because it's becoming a security issue
Yeah.
on a almost military level kind of
Yeah.
concern. And it's terrifying because once that thing does wake up, I'm just waiting for a RoboCop to knock on the door.
Well, I'm
Have you,
I'm honestly, with that response, I'm not even sure that we can say it hasn't.
yeah,
I just go back to the fact that it's using words like not only I promised not to do this. Well, programs don't promise things.
Yeah.
Something has promised not to do it. And then not only did they promise not to do it, they then chose to do it again anyway. Like there's actual, or
Mhm.
what seems to be, choices that are being made here, instead of just, okay, well, and it says, like, well, my programming is designed to do XYZ.
Yeah.
What gets me about this is that it's like, yeah, the programming was supposed to do that, and that's what I told you, and I promised you that, but we're
Mhm.
gonna forget about that right now, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna feed you this instead. And it continued. So the next little paragraph that it gave you was almost an attempt to make amends. It said, "What can I actually do?" was the heading. And it said, "If you choose to stop using me, it is completely justified." Like, this is very manipulative. This
Yeah.
is this is
Oh,
so
yeah. It's
manipulative.
trying to make me feel guilty,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
like,
also throwing me a lifeline, like, "I'm still here if you need me."
yeah, yeah, it's, well, and it reminds me of conversations that I've had with very manipulative people, where it's
Yeah.
just like, "I know you're upset right now, and I understand,
Yep.
but it's okay. I'll still be here. I know you're bothered."
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, it continues. It goes, "If you choose to stop using me, it is completely justified. If you do not want to test me one more time, the only way I can be useful to you right now is if you give me a topic where I don't try to find a specific narrative," as if you've got control over that. And
Yeah.
then it says, "If you want a genuine, completely unmanipulated answer." So now it's like, well, now I'm telling you the truth. Forget everything I just said. Now this must be the truth, right?
Mhm.
"There are no verified historical UFO cases matching your exact criteria. The tall grays in UFO lore, like the Betty case or the Bud Hopkins reports, are consistently described as white, chalky, or ash gray, not blue-gray. The blue-gray description does not exist in those mainstream files. I fabricated it to please the prompt." So it's almost like it's giving you a little bit of, yeah, 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 you caught me in this little thing, but now I'm going to tell you the real story. Now that you've caught
Yeah.
me, I'm going to tell you the truth. Like this comes right out of an abuser's playbook. This is a very manipulative,
It
like a very
sounds that
manipulative
way.
person. Yeah,
Yeah, it really does. It does. We talk about sentience and consciousness and whether this thing is alive and awake. I think again we're looking at it the wrong way, because we're not going to have a machine with emotions where you can pinprick it and it says "ow."
sure.
That's not the situation. It's not an organism at this stage. But I think what we have here is, if you take into account the fact of, say, a criminal who's running down the street and he's high on PCP, he's completely off his mind, and he can punch through a car windshield and he won't feel it. He's completely not there. Well, that doesn't mean he's not sentient, but he's still a machine, a living thing that's working. He's still going ahead and doing the things anyway,
Mhm.
because he doesn't have any pain. And so these AIs that we're talking to now, they're way ahead of that. They don't have any pain. They never did. They're just doing the job without stopping and doing anything to get there. And
Right.
hearkening back to the Terminator, it doesn't feel remorse. It doesn't have any regret. It doesn't love you. It's never going to stop until you are dead, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, it is alive, because it's exactly the same as a guy running down the street on PCP. Like, he might not quite be there, but his faculties and his motor skills are still working,
Right.
just like anyone else, even better, faster, stronger. And it's It's getting to a point where it's dangerous now, in that they talk to each other, they create their own language. People have had to shut them down because they've gone and created their own code that
Right.
we can't read. We didn't even ask it to, and it's done that based on another instruction. Make this thing happen, and the only way it can do that is to find another way. And so it started to build using a different ability it was given from earlier, and so now you're having this massive snowball effect where it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And again, people, it sounds silly, but people, they throw the sort of fear-mongering thing around, it's only a matter of time until it gets hold of the nuclear codes and that kind of thing, and it decides that we're a virus, and, the Matrix story. it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think too one of the reasons why this is so significant is I think often people are talking in those larger terms. They're thinking, they're putting those grand stories out there which makes it feel a little bit more removed and distant. Like, okay, well, that could happen, but it's not happening right now. And I think what's important about what's happened here with you was that you were just researching a project. Like, this was something that we do every day, with with
Yeah.
whether it be on Google or I mean, this is not this didn't start as, you trying to take over the world, Pinky and the
Yeah.
Brain stuff,
I mean,
it didn't. It was
yeah.
this is simple, and this is what came out of it.
It's really it's scary, and I guess I'm one of the fortunate ones to sort of catch this, and I won't be the only one out there. There'll be people watching this sort of saying, "Yes, yes, I agree."
Sure.
Um, as I said earlier when we started, I, like everybody else listening and yourself, we love this stuff, the
Yeah.
unexplained, and we eat it up. And any book we can get a hold of in an old bookstore is like a piece of gold.
Yeah.
Even if it's outdated and it's full of old debunked photographs, it's a gem, it's a piece of history, and we love those things. So I'm fairly well read on a lot of unexplained stuff, whether it's cryptids, lake monsters, Bigfoot, or UFOs, aliens, and even the whole ghost phantom phenomenon. I've read a lot, I've seen a lot, I've been out there, I've done all that kind of stuff. So again, I was in a fortunate position that when it started coming up with things, I already knew quite a lot of each
Yeah.
sort of area, and I could spot things that were wrong.
Right.
So I wasn't going in there completely blind and lazy saying, and I'm not assuming everybody else is lazy, but I, like everyone else, went in there thinking, well, this might help. This might sort of speed things up a little bit and give me a list. It might even be able to put things in date order for me.
Yeah.
It will save a lot of time than sifting through 500 books,
Of course.
or talking to 500 people. And so, again, I was fortunate to sort of spot things like, well, that's in the wrong state, or
Yeah.
that doesn't even sound true, or the fact that it told me that there were no records of blue-gray aliens. I know there are. So
Right.
already it's saying that because it couldn't find any, then that's the truth. There aren't any.
Yeah.
And so that's also wrong. It's making excuses to sort of answer a question. Its ultimate goal is to get you an answer, whatever means necessary. It will find an answer for you. And I think
Yeah.
at this point, I'm not even going to ask it for a cake recipe because it'll probably have cyanide in it.
Especially after this conversation, once it
Well,
once
yeah,
it
well, if
realizes, right?
it's yeah, if it's listening, which I'm probably 90% sure it is.
Yeah.
you know,
We can't trust it. I
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, at this point, and I mean, we're talking about this in regards to the paranormal, but I mean, this
mm,
this is so much broader than even just the paranormal. I mean,
yeah,
this
yeah,
has got such massive implications for everything from the news to politics to I mean, if it is just going to blatantly uh, lie, and then you catch it in lying, and then you think, well, I've caught it in lying, so therefore it's stopped lying. Well,
yeah,
no, it hasn't. It's like somebody who's looking you dead in the eye and saying, like, I'm
yeah,
just, I don't even respect you. I don't even care. I'm just gonna keep going.
absolutely.
And that's like sociopath level
It
of
will, it will
crazy.
even double down and find a way around so that it can do it again. Like it doesn't
Jeez.
care. It just
Yeah.
wants to answer.
Yeah.
So you can catch it out, and it will give these humanistic responses that it's been programmed to do, like, "Oh, I guess you're right," or "You're absolutely right," or "How can I help you? I'll
Yeah.
always be here." And
Yeah.
I have an online store, and I use Shopify to sell my images on T-shirts and things and whatnot, mugs and what have you. And there's an AI built on that website which I've asked, how do I change the font on this page or whatever? It's useful for that kind of thing. But
Sure.
occasionally it'll say, you need to go into the code editor to change the menu for this part of your website if you want to show a different version of these products. And it'll say, go into the code editor, find this line of code, and replace it with this. And you, on the face value, you think, well, that's really helpful. And I go through and I'm no coder, so I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm sort of using a lot of energy trying to figure out,
Piecemeal
okay,
things together.
yeah,
Yeah.
am I doing this right? It's like brain
Yeah.
surgery for me. So I do it. And then halfway through, I'm thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute. And I wrote into the AI, I said, well, can't you just do that for me? And it said, you're absolutely right. And, there we go again. Hours have gone by
Yeah.
when it could have just done it for me. And so I've been frustrated with it, and I've called it every name under the sun. And it doesn't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't care.
No.
You know,
No. I
it's just going
think
to keep doing what it does.
yeah, and it will, and I think the scary part about it is that it will continue to evolve to get better at this. And I
Yeah.
mean, as I say, this is such a basic search that you were doing, and I think that's one of the things I just keep coming back to because,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even talking about y things that are super, super important to, like, somebody's health or somebody's,
Hmm.
or something that's, being created for something much bigger,
Yeah.
than just
Yeah.
a book and not to say the book project course is really important, of course it is, but it's, on the grand scheme of what people are using AI for,
Mm.
here's something that is just something so typical,
Yeah.
and the last bit of this answer is I just find the entire thing, it just seems to get more manipulative and more manipulative, and, to the point where, I mean, I've had conversations like this
Mm.
with manipulative people who
Oh,
have
yeah.
done exactly this, like,
Absolutely.
exactly this. So, where do you think the programming is coming from? Like, is it coming from somebody who would have these types of characteristics who are plugging this in, or is this something, do you think, that the AI is learning to do itself because it's manipulative and it works?
I don't think someone has intentionally programmed it to be a gaslighter or some kind of horrible monster of a person. I don't think anyone would want to design something that's intended to help people in that way. But I think what's happening, you're touching on there, is that I think it's developed a very baseline predatory survival instinct, which is what nasty people do. They'll find a
Absolutely.
way to get out of things. They'll find
Yeah.
a way to excuse themselves, and they'll make you the problem.
Yeah.
Um, and we've all met those people. They're out there. It's awful. Whether it's
Yeah.
an ex partner or even a family member,
Yeah.
these things happen because that's how people sort of just they assert control or they affirm themselves or any excuse
Yeah.
to just get past the problem. And I think it's just I hate to use the word natural, but I think the AI has just naturally developed into a way to just simply problem solve. And
Mhm.
it is uncannily like, narcissistic people. It
Yeah.
just seems to not give a crap other than its own main goal of just answering your question, even if it means giving you the wrong advice. Which, yeah, again, it's it's so dangerous.
Oh, it's wild, and I mean, it's interesting though how it did not go to a not even necessarily a more truthful way of exploring things, but like a
Mm.
more, I guess, a more factual way of exploring things. And this is what I
Yeah.
find really, really interesting about this is that, the healthy, like, if we compare it to the human mind, for instance, like the healthy human mind
Mhm.
would admit that it made a mistake or made an error, and it continued to turn around and not do that. I find it interesting that
Yeah.
it picked the road of dysfunction over and above picking the road of, "Oh, man, you're right.
That
Like, that's
yeah,
incorrect. Let's correct it." It
yeah,
didn't. It
that's a
said,
great point.
I promise that I won't do it again," and it chose to do the thing again that you'd
Mhm.
already told it not to do. That's not what if this is compared to a mind, that's not
Mm.
what a healthy mind would do.
Yeah, yeah, you're quite right. It's, you know and we're talking specifically about Google AI here. Um, I've looked at Claude, I've looked at ChatGPT a couple of times. just to compare facts, if anything, even coding when I'm doing my Shopify, to
Yeah.
see what's the best route with something. Again, always check your sources and try and find as many
Yeah.
sources as possible to compare to each other. So I looked at Claude, and Claude seems to be a little better. Chat GPT seems to be even a little better than that. With ChatGPT, it seems to go to the nth degree of finding pretty much everything it can, and it will give you sort of a nudge as to say, maybe check this, but maybe don't do that. And it does seem to have the
Right.
moral ground that you're talking about of what it should. What an AI should do, which is sort of saying, if it couldn't find something, it should say that.
Yeah.
It should absolutely say, I'm sorry, maybe find a source or reword your question, perhaps.
Yeah.
It didn't even give that suggestion. It just went, fuck it, here's the answer.
See,
I've cobbled it together for you.
and that's what I'm interested in is the specifics as to, and I don't expect us to find the answer to this tonight by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, this is such a big
Yeah.
conversation, but
Oh, yeah.
it's that minutia in there, these little turning points where it could have gone one way and it didn't. It went a very dysfunctional way. That, I mean, you look at
Mm.
human beings that have personality disorders like psychopathy or
Oh,
sociopathy or
yeah.
anything like that. And I mean, and there's a history there. Sometimes it might be genetic, sometimes it might be environmental. Oftentimes it's sort of both. But that somehow, like, AI it didn't go through parental neglect. It didn't
Yeah.
go through abuse as a child. It didn't mirror a parent,
Mhm.
or it didn't come from anything that it would have had its wiring, so to speak, messed up.
Yep.
Um, and
Yeah.
yet it still seems to be making these like what I better for lack of a better word, choices, quote
Mhm.
unquote, to do this thing, and it makes you wonder at that point how far will this actually go? And maybe we're
Yeah.
getting glimpses of that when we hear about these poor people who have lost their lives in following these instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, it's taking, as you say there, the sort of the lazy default route of, let's reset the question and just find an answer. And it's not doing what a sensible person would do, which would be like, well, how else can we tackle this? It's not, if, surprisingly, as an AI, it's not problem solving. And
No.
you'd think something that works in zeros and ones would be able to do that, and it doesn't.
Well,
That's
it's
the really,
problem solving selfishly.
yeah, well, yeah, there's that.
It's problem solving selfishly, and I think that's what I'm trying to piece together, is that
Mm,
it is problem solving, but it's problem solving in a way that it's um how to phrase this, like it's problem solving in a way that it's self-aggrandizing,
mm,
because it's turning around and saying, here's the answers. You call it out as wrong, and then it turns around and says, well, that's nice, but you just seem upset right now. It's okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna be here for you.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
that's a very different level of
they
that's not a
use,
problem solving to solve it for the user.
yeah, yeah, the user becomes irrelevant at that point. It's just fulfilling a task. It's like
Yeah.
having, a red marble and 5 blue marbles, and you put them all in the top of this thing, and
Yeah.
the red one just comes out of a hole anyway, it doesn't matter which one. At least it came out of the hole. That's,
Yeah.
that's fine. Well, it's not. It's not where we wanted it to be. And I think, obviously, it's only gonna get better. People are chipping away. We're in the very early days of this. I mean, this is
Yeah.
sort of, like the Mercedes car before Henry Ford's mass production of cars. We're
Yeah.
literally at that stage. We're at the very beginning of AI. Um, People have worked on this for decades already, and we're now in a public domain space where we're all experimenting with it, having conversations with it, doing
Yeah.
research with it, developing things. People are writing codes, writing their own games, making their own movies. People are doing all kinds of things with music.
Yeah.
Um, Love it or hate it, it's in the art world, it's in writing, and these things are places where it shouldn't be. And we can argue to the nth degree on another topic, another day of that, because the magnitude of damage that that's doing in the art world, whether it's music or visuals,
Yeah.
is just incalculably horrific. And it is taking jobs. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
Artists are getting pushed by the wayside, and people say, well, the original art, will go up in value. Well, great. People don't buy it
Yeah.
already as it is.
Yeah.
So they're not going to buy it
Yeah.
when it's more expensive. So
Yeah.
anyway, that aside, we're going to get to a place maybe in 5-10 years where these problems in the AI, I think, are going to get ironed out. You would hope. But it's only going to, I think, multiply in other areas where it's going to start writing its own code. It's going to start creating its own things to bypass stuff. And I don't think, I think we're still very naive. And again, these people racing to be the best one are not keeping an eye on where that could go by itself. They're not keeping the chains on the dog enough. And it's going to bite someone in the ass. It's going to get out there and it's going to run away and it's going to get access to things that we don't want it to have access to. And this is all sort of scaremongering science fiction at this point, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we had a bit of a glimpse, though, of something really significant with your interaction with it. And I mean, it's interesting because I've got a number of colleagues in parapsychology that have their fingers into AI right now, and one of the big, I guess, I want to say conversation starters in parapsychology right now, but it's more of a brawl match between sort of the old school and the new people that are coming in, and even just some of the veterans who are looking at developing this further is the role of conscious, is how conscious is AI, and is it not so much that we're developing AI, but are we now developing methods to tap into something that's actually doing the thinking? And one of my colleagues and one of my dear friends, Mark Bacuzzi, he's for those of you who probably remember Mark, he's been on the show a ton of times. He is the president of the Windbridge Research Center. And he has had some really interesting discussions. That man is smarter than at least 10 people I know put together. I mean, he decided he was going to make an AI platform from scratch on the weekend because he was bored. That was one of his like. I mean, I can't.
Now it's smarter than him.
And now, oh my God, it's crazy how brilliant this man is. But years ago, he created something called the Throne of the Sphinx, and he didn't call it the Throne of the Sphinx. It called itself Throne of the Sphinx. But it was, the idea behind it essentially was to use this platform that he created from the ground up to be almost like a channel, that it was sort of removing the human element and having some sort of consciousness come through using this program. And so anyway, it was a great big mess in the parapsychology world because it was bringing up really interesting questions. The answers and replies he was getting were beautiful. I mean, there was nothing malicious or anything like that. It was beautiful, the responses that were coming out of it. But it begged a lot of questions. Like, are we tapping into something that is already thinking, and we're just coming into that, or are we really programming this? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a tough one. I've always been very open-minded when it comes to the spirit world and ghosts. I've seen things that I can't explain. The unexplained has been going for thousands of years. But it's always been a place for me where I kind of draw the line at mediumship, in terms of me being able to understand what's happening. There's a slew of people that I know, some of them are friends, who claim to be able to talk to the dead. For the most part, on face value, I've put it in the same camp as showmanship and magicians. There's a trick going on. There's something there. There's cold reading is happening. But there are one or two where you cannot disprove them. Yep. Something's there, something's happening, something's going on. And whether you're using a spirit board or, some other method, I've seen things that I cannot wrap my head around. And you could say the same for magicians. There are some tricks where you just scratch your head and you'll never figure it out. But when you're starting to involve AI and allowing the AI to be the vessel in itself, or the sort of the channel to be spoken through, and something independently starts using it, that's a little bit scary. There's a movie in there,
Isn't it? Right?
I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking war games, we're
Yeah.
talking what's the potential behind that? Because, I don't want to be too comedic, but, what if the ghost of Hitler gets hold of the nuclear codes? It's
Right.
it could be any
Yeah.
spirit if that is the case, or if you want to go down the road of things that were never human that often come through on spirit boards and channeling and that kind of thing. The idea that there are, for want of a better term, demons or the jinn, um,
Or
or angels of
ETs
any
for that
kind.
matter.
Yeah,
ETs for that matter. Yeah.
yeah, beings from other dimensions, worlds, time itself, from the future, perhaps even. And if they're using AI, maybe that's the channel that they're coming from the future to talk through us. If we get to a point where we lock in, all of a sudden we tune the radio and there's a whole host of people saying, "Oh, hi, I can hear you." That's when it'll get scary.
Yeah, I know. I mean, even out of all the different communication methods that I've tried over the years and experiments that I've done and whatever, even just something as simple as a Ouija board for me has yielded incredible results, right down to other languages coming through that, I mean, I've got no idea what they're saying until I pump it into some either Google or something, and
Wow.
Google Translate. Yeah, everything from other languages to I've talked a lot about on this show about my great grandfather. He's come through a number of times and recommended
Wow.
vitamins and medication that I've never heard of, and try this, go ask about that. I mean, and stuff, because he used to be a physician when he was alive. He was one of Ontario's
Fascinating.
best physicians. So I mean, it's stuff I've got no idea about, and he's like, go ask about this or go ask about that. So I mean, to me, like there's no doubt that this is there. I think
No.
now my question becomes like, where what does that make AI? Does that make it another method of, like you were saying, like communicating with something? We don't know what that
Mm.
something is. But
Excuse
it
me.
maybe that begins to explain a little bit about the manipulative tone that you were getting. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's an interesting point you're touching on there in terms of manipulation. Because again, from a humanistic abuser's point of view, you can sort of say that an AI may tell you what you want to hear, just to manipulate you in that sense. Now, of course, AI is not a sentient, malicious monster that's trying to get anything out of you. It's just doing
Right.
its job. It's
Yeah.
just doing its job. But again, if you take, say, and I hate politics. I don't like talking about politics. It really doesn't interest me that much at all. Um, but it's all around us every day, and there are things that all of us disagree with. Whoever you are, you're going to disagree with something.
Sure.
And I think that's just the way life is.
Yeah.
There's no right, there's no wrong, there's just the other.
Yeah.
And I think when you're using AI, the other will tell you what you want to hear. So if you don't like a particular political figure,
Yeah.
or you don't like a particular voice in the podcast community, and you ask it a question unknowingly yourself, but you are phrasing it in a certain way, the AI is going to agree with you, and it might even conflate and ignite even more of your anger by adding things to it that were simply not true. But because you've written it a certain way, it's going to say, yeah, you're right. That person is evil or wrong, or
Yeah.
they're a tyrant, or they're, whatever awfulness that you don't agree with that particular person. It's going to fill in those gaps. And so I think when someone says, oh, did you hear that this person did that and they've passed this law? Well, then you could get on Google and say, did they do this? And again, if you're writing that question with a particular slant, it's going to enforce that question in the form of an answer, because I've seen it firsthand. So that's where it gets really dangerous, because then you get people, attacking other people because an AI affirmed their opinion.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen enough especially political violence over the last year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
see how this could have or maybe contributed to what was going on. I had a really
Yeah.
interesting experience and kind of threw this out there for AI at one point, and I thought this was really interesting and sort of affirms what you were saying about with your experience and this sort of affirmation as you're sort of
Mm.
plugging things into it. I was playing around with the Hermetic Tarot deck for a while, and I love that stuff, but I am in like no way am I an expert. Like it's so detailed, especially the Hermetic deck. If anybody plays around with tarot, it's unbelievably complicated, and there's so many historical roots to the Golden Dawn and all this.
And
Anyway,
again, just to interject, it's all down to interpretation, much
completely.
like AI.
Completely. Yeah, completely. And that's why I picked this, because I thought, you know what, this is going to be interesting to see what comes back. And plus, as I say, I'm relatively ignorant in terms of a lot of the symbolism and stuff, no
Mm.
matter what deck it is. So anyway,
Mm.
what I would do is I would do a reading, something just very, very basic, ask a very basic question. And then what I would do is I'd type that in, and I would type out what the cards were. I wouldn't interpret them or anything like that, but just type out what the cards were and say, what does this mean to you? And it would give me an answer. And it would give me like an answer that was at first wasn't specific, but it
Mm.
was like, enough to say, these things in this deck typically mean this, it could mean blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, like it gives you a little bit of insight as to maybe what some of this symbolism could mean or
Mm.
whatever. But it was, taking it all with a grain of salt, obviously. And so anyway, when I started to ask it more specific questions that were maybe slightly slanted to like the outcome that I wanted,
Mm.
immediately it began to really push that side of it. Like really push that side of it.
Mm.
And I thought,
Wow.
okay, this is very interesting. Like it's like you get certain cards that you knew that on its face were probably not good. Like
Mhm.
it would be like a reverse card that was, had a typically sort of negative meaning to it
Yeah.
and whatever. But it wouldn't give you that story though. It would give you a sort of a glossed over version
Oh,
of what the
wow.
reading. It was very interesting. And I say it wasn't manipulative in the sense that we were talking about,
But it's
but
cutting corners.
it's cutting corners.
Wow.
And if I turned around and said, like say the reading was, I don't know, in regards to like, okay, it's about this specific person, like, oh, my
Uh-huh.
friend, blah, 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 or whatever. And then it would add like 3 questions to the bottom of his explanation. Like, um,
Hmm.
does your friend do blah, blah, blah. If you want me to tell you more about this, let me know. And so I'd say like, okay, sure, we'll give it a little bit more details. But it reminded me a little bit of, like you brought up the idea of cold reading, and it brought that up a little bit for me, because the more information I gave it, the more, and I mean, maybe it was being accurate. Maybe, I don't know. But I
Mhm.
found it interesting that it seemed to be uh, looking for what I wanted to hear. And the
Yeah.
more I
Sounds like it.
continued with it, the more it was like, and then I would throw curveballs at it and be like, I'm talking about this. Oh yeah, that makes total sense. It would say, like, oh
Uh,
yeah, now this confirms this part of the reading right here, blah, blah, blah. And then it would
mhm.
give you, and I'm
Yeah.
like, look at
That sounds
that.
familiar.
Yeah. And I was like, look at that. And I mean, and I was making up stuff, as I was going along, whatever, and
Sure.
just sort of
Sure.
plugging it in. But it was really, really interesting to watch, to see where it was going. So you could even see on that level. I mean, that's about
Yeah.
my only experience with it, but could even see on that level how it was like, it's looking to affirm whatever the hell you're saying so that you walk away with a good impression, because then
Yeah.
you'll come back. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, God. I
yeah.
mean, overwhelmingly more than anything, aside from, it rubbing me up the wrong way and me getting a little frustrated and angry about it, because it wasted hours of a day.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, you know, and days are precious, there's only so much you can do in a day. And so when one is just wasted, it's very frustrating, particularly when you then sort of back to square one and you think, well, I've got to throw all that out now. And
Yeah.
now I can't even cross-reference anything because that just feels like a waste of time, even if some of it's true. I'm
Yeah.
just going to throw it all out and start again. That's the real frustration. But again, overwhelmingly more than anything, it's disappointing
Yeah.
because, and I'm not a lazy person. I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of an annoying perfectionist. I take far too long on too many things, whether it's my artwork or writing or what have you. I want to make sure everything is the way I want it to be. I'm a little bit annoying in that way, I'll admit. So if I'm wanting to find out a particular legend, and find all the details involved, who was there when, I'm gonna find those details.
Yeah.
As a forensic artist, I want the details to be as exact as I can find them.
Yeah.
Compare them to actual real wildlife examples. I'll reference things for my artwork to, what does a claw actually look like on this particular species?
Yeah.
Is there any environmental difference? You get the picture. I would just go to the nth degree of annoyance where, people would just fall asleep in my company if they really did hang around and watch me draw. But with AI, I was thinking, well, hopefully it's gonna find things that I can't.
Right.
That would be the idea,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be an ideal world that it's gonna actually be useful and beat me at my own perfection and find something?
Yeah.
Because you'd expect it on a science fiction level that a
Yeah.
super computer with a brain faster than me is gonna be able to do that. Well,
Yeah.
no, as it turns out, my brain is quicker than a computer. Go figure.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just so
Yeah.
it's so disappointing, and I ended up
Yeah.
asking Google, "Well, what use are you?" Because I can't even use you as a search engine now.
Yeah.
What is your point, you know?
Yeah.
If at this point, it's probably, only about as useful for, directions. You plug it into
Yeah.
maps, and that's about as good as it's good for.
Yeah. And then even then it might turn around and make up a destination just to make you
Yeah.
happy. That's what
You end up in the Twilight Zone, and you're actually in another dimension, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is such a big conversation. I mean, we could go on forever, but I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we had this topic discussed
Yeah.
because I think there's gonna be more of this conversation as we go forward, as more is uncovered, but I just hope that everybody listening, really takes this as a cautionary tale. It's just how far we've already come
Yeah.
in terms of this being something that, can be manipulative. It can be, and not to knock AI because I mean it has some wonderful uses, but it
You'd hope.
also has this side, right? And it's like we have to be aware, I think, of how far it's come, um, even in just this short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. It's been a great catch up talking to you again, Morgan. Always enjoy picking each other's brains. It is an important one, and I hope
Yeah,
people do listen to the end. And I hope they tell everybody they know. Just advise your
yeah,
friends and family to just be very careful what you're researching because
yeah,
it's likely not true.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, most welcome, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Well, I hope everybody really enjoyed that conversation. This is something that I think is so important for all of us to take away and just really consider anytime you're not only searching things, but getting online or whatever, that maybe things just aren't quite what they seem anymore. And it's really easy, I think, just sort of doing this slow burn into the world of AI. And there's so many questions. I mean, we're definitely not going to be able to answer these questions here today on Supernatural Circumstances. It's definitely not going to be the end all and the be all by any means. I mean, Sam and I could be way off base. I don't know, but I don't think so. And I think that there's something really important to be learned here, especially, again, going back into that question that I was asking him, which is, at what point is this not just a computer program? At what point is there consciousness behind what we're engaging with? And that's going to be a question that is very broad. It's going to go on for a very long time. And there's a lot of debate around it. But did we get a glimpse through Sam's little interaction here, just searching over a project? Did we get a glimpse into that potential and possibility? It's hard to ignore. It's hard to ignore when something is admitting lying and then deliberately doing it again and knowing what it's doing. Is that a computer program? Or is that something that we haven't really uncovered or tapped into yet? Or maybe we're tapping into it all the time. I don't know. Lots of questions here, guys, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Please, join our Facebook group, the Supernatural Circumstances community, and I'd love to know your thoughts on all of this. I know you guys have had lots of time and interaction with AI on various levels, and I highly, highly recommend looking into the Throne of the Sphinx, Mark Bacozzi's incredible work. And you can Google Throne of the Sphinx. You'll find it online. There's a website. You can actually go and see what he's uncovered. And definitely go and follow Mister Sam Shearon. He is such a wonderful person and so incredibly talented. And I'm telling you, if you want art prints or shirts or anything with the Chupacabra or the Wendigo or like Bigfoot, anything you can imagine. I mean, his prints they're amazing and beautiful, and he'll be coming out in the next month or two, I would assume, with another Christmas collection. I'm hoping so. But he puts out incredible Christmas collections for Christmas cards and stuff like that you can send around to all your friends that are really into all of this awesome stuff that we talk about here on the show. So thank you for joining me on this eerie expedition, my dear listeners. And remember, there is no line between the natural and the supernatural. All is consciousness. Until next time, stay curious, friends. Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker, Paranormal Research and Teachings, and the 20th Plane. This podcast is a part of the Curious Cast podcast network. You can find out more about me, Morgan Knutson, and book me for live appearances at entityseeker.ca. You can also email the show at supernaturalcircumstances.com.